Welcome back. You're still watching Inside Politics at KTN News KE. That's our Twitter handle. Use the hashtag Inside Politics. And we continue with another big headline. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka's candidature for president could be hanging in the balance after the registrar of political parties wrote to Kalonzo's party seeking to know the status in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party agreement. The registrar says that Musyoka's Wiper party is yet to formally seek to exit from the Azimio coalition, and therefore Kalonzo may not be cleared for the race for president. However, IEBC says Kalonzo may be cleared provided he meets the threshold. KTN's political affairs reporter Daniel Kariuki opens up this story.
In 10 days' time, the IEBC will begin receiving nomination papers from presidential aspirants. In those 10 days, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka will be on sabbatical. From the social media pictures, Musyoka seems to be enjoying his brief break from social politics while he reflects on the direction he will take in the next general elections. As emissary continue to flock his Yata home to persuade him back to Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party, details have emerged that the registrar of political parties has officially written to Kalonzo regarding his stand on the coalition after the Wiper leader declared his presidential bid on a Wiper party ticket, a party that is already a member of a coalition.
I've suffered the consequences of bad faith for far too long. I mean, for how long do people expect one Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka to be the one always to sacrifice? Always to sacrifice.
Kalonzo has insisted that his name and that of his running mate Andrew Sunkuli were properly before IEBC. However, his bid could be held back by the Azimio coalition agreement and the political party's law amended recently that suggests it would be impossible for a constituents party in the coalition to field a presidential candidate. The registrar's office has therefore insisted on due process if a party seeks to opt out of a coalition. Wiper, however, is yet to formally begin its exit from Azimio. But even as the registrar of political parties warned Kalonzo that he may not be cleared to run for presidency over his ties with Azimio, IEBC is reading from a different script.
We don't know about Azimio agreement. The commission is guided by the Elections Act. If he complies with the Elections Act, he will be cleared.
Kalonzo having left a window for a likely comeback, and with time running out, efforts to convince him are at an advanced stage, even as leaders from Mukemanian section of the clergy from the region call on him to go back to Azimio.
We urge him to reconsider his decision and work in partnership with Azimio One Kenya coalition party and marshal all his regional and national supporters and followers and bring them back to Azimio One Kenya coalition party.
He cannot be left out of any political arrangement because his contribution and guidance is what Kenya needs at the moment to remain a stable, united, and prosperous nation.
I don't think we would encourage chairman to continue wooing him if he's not really up to building the coalition.
Having been assigned the chief minister slot with powers to coordinate and supervise government affairs in Azimio, and with his allies insisting it must be anchored in the Azimio coalition agreement as a guarantee to avert post-election tussles, the next 10 days will likely be Kalonzo Musyoka make or break moment. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News.
Now that was in direct relation to the failure by Raila Odinga to name Kalonzo Musyoka his running mate. So we still continue with that running mate debate. And the question is, miscalculation or political genius for Kalonzo Musyoka?
Well, I think when one looks at Kalonzo Musyoka, he plays in a very unique league. Number one is the luckiest politician alive in Kenya today. And number two is the unluckiest politician alive today. So let's begin with the luckiest man. When he is making the announcement that he's going to be running for president at a function at his headquarters in Hadi, at the same time, Raila Odinga is naming him as a chief cabinet secretary. So this speaks to somebody who is very lucky. That Raila Odinga is nominating you as a chief cabinet secretary, while at the same time you are announcing yourself as a presidential candidate, and in return naming Sukuli as your nominee. But number two, and very critical, is he has been mistreated within the Azimio infrastructure, the same way he was mistreated at CORD and the same way he was mistreated at NASA. And anybody who thinks that Kalonzo is a man that you are going to step on his toes and vomit on his shoes and go home and sing Hail Mary, you're going to get a very rude shock. Because he sits on a vote that is behind his pocket. The pocket is actually, or rather, the vote is in his pocket. He's kept it and he can swing it whichever way he wants. That is why when he says to them, jump, they do not ask him how high. They just respond to his instructions. Now, the reason why I said he's the unluckiest, there are a number of people within the Azimio infrastructure who have advised Raila Odinga that in fact you can get the Kamba vote in the absence of Kalonzo Musyoka. That if you've got Kivuda Kibwana and you've got Charity Ngilu before then with Governor Mutua, you will get the vote. But they'll get a very rude shock if they keep on mistreating Kalonzo Musyoka, because if he decides to run, then it's going to cause an upset both in Kenya Kwanza as well as in Azimio la Umoja. And even if today he decides to support Azimio, there are a few voters who are not necessarily emotional and irrational within his voting base who will actually punish Raila Odinga on the way he has been mistreated. Because, you know, Kenyans respond to ethnic nationalism. There are people who view Kalonzo as their leader, and when they see him being treated at the national level, they register offense. And because now Kalonzo knows for a fact that he's not going to be a very strong presidential candidate in either of the formations, and he's not going to be a running mate in any of the formations, I think he now needs to sit back as he takes care of his impressive family. So the cow, the chicken, and everything else, and maybe nominate, or not nominate, endorse a presidential candidate. Because from the way he was speaking, you will see the fury in his eyes. He's extremely disappointed with Azimio. And if I were Kalonzo, I'd say that to teach them a lesson, because he says he's tired of making sacrifices, he can make another sacrifice, one more, to punish his political enemies, and, you know, endorse another presidential candidate.
Okay, Wakili Nyaribo, you've said on this show, and you're very categorical, that Kalonzo Musyoka will be the man to watch. Is this what you meant? What we are seeing now?
Yeah, it's very subjective on this one. I don't understand why it cannot be objective, especially on issue of mistreatment. Honestly, dynamics change in politics. I mean, you cannot, we were all 13 and we were promised a lot of things, and we've come to this age. You cannot say, but when I was 13, you told me this. We all knew Kithure Kindiki really is going to be named as a running mate for William Ruto. That did not happen. Kithure has behaved so professional and gone on air, and with all the pain, he has said, okay, no problem, another day will come. So when Kalonzo Musyoka honestly should be Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, should be President actually, he's that material. But how he makes his calculations when the wind and the wave is not in his favor is what is the question. I mean, you cannot be mad that the climate change has affected you, but you can be mad that probably God does not love me or something like that. So you cannot target Raila Odinga and say he is mistreating me when everyone around that particular coalition is saying strategically, let us pick this to be on this box, let us pick this to be on the other box. So I, in my honest view, think Kalonzo Musyoka at times does not have the best interests of the whole country in his heart. He may have very good, ideas about the lower eastern region and his people and his supporters, but when you are going to climb into the national office, those things must be checked. You cannot insist that I have been changed, I have been shortchanged. It is time to fight together and bring economic liberation, fight poverty, do better roads, healthcare, water. And that is what all these people are trying to do, whether in Kenya Kwanza or in Azimio la Umoja. But when you want to single-handedly say, I am the only one who can bring water to the people, then you miss the mark. And this is why we are in this kind of skirmishes right now.
Hesbon, Wakili Nyaribo is not very sympathetic to the Wiper Party leader. What do you say?
Well, I think the Wiper Party leader is the man to watch in these elections. And at this point, I don't really think we can say that it's a question of miscalculation. What is clear is that there is a lot of indecisiveness in the way he has behaved in the recent past. And I think some of the claims that have been made, I think, are blown out of proportion. In politics, there is nothing like sacrificing. No politician sacrifices. Sacrifices for who? In politics, it's about clout. If your clout does not earn your position, that's it. You fit where you belong. And the way Wakili has put it clearly, dynamics change. I mean, in 2013, Martha Karua was not a strong presidential candidate. But then in the last few days, we've seen her triumphant entry into Mount Kenya region like a heroine, things change. And I think it's just important that we put this in perspective. I don't think a decision has been made that is definitive, whether Kalonzo Musyoka will run as a presidential candidate or will take the position that he's been offered by Azimio Kenya. For that, we have to wait until June 6th, because that is when the presidential candidates will be presenting their papers to IEBC. That is when we will know that he's actually in the race, you know. And then number two, if you look at the structure that Raila Odinga unveiled, you know, it's quite clear that the position that Kalonzo Musyoka has been given actually has almost the same job description as the vice president in Kenya Kwanza. So you want to tell me that the stature that he has been given in Azimio is not something that can bring you know, social and economic securities to the people of the Kamba nation? Absolutely not. I mean, that's a very solid position that captures the aspirations of the people in Kambaland. And by looking at just that, I think between now and June 6th, there's a lot that is likely to happen. I mean, these are people who are rational. They are not people who believe in ethnic nationalism, like Dismas says, blindly. They believe that they have a leader, but they can also see what leadership is supposed to do. Leadership is supposed to address the plight of the people. Now, if you read the nitty-gritties of what has been enshrined in what WIPA is given as a political party within the Azimio One Kenya lands, I mean, it's as good as it can get. And I don't think the Kamba nation can get that one anywhere in terms of the way it has been structured. But lastly, let me say that coalition building is very difficult. And to a large extent, in as much as we've seen some sort of discipline in Kenya Kwanza, it actually tells you that people don't scramble for things that are not beneficial. No one will throw a stone at a tree that does not have fruits. So the fact that all along, Kalonzo has been making demands here and there, but making demands within a coalition that he has not left, and there are all indications that it will be difficult to leave, basically tells you that there is something in Azimio, and if they were to put their house in order, if they were to have Kalonzo Musyoka take that position, I think we'll be in for a very interesting electioneering period.
What kind of result does it portend if at all Kalonzo was to wake up today and say, okay, fine, I'm walking back to Azimio? Even after declaring his own presidential bid, after naming a running mate and saying, I'm not going back there?
That is the best question, and that is the only question that we should ask. It doesn't matter which 3 steps he takes. He can go to Kenya Kwanza, he can stay with Azimio, he can negotiate with Jimmy, and we know he has reached out to all these people. The big question is, what is it that he can be given by any of these parties that he has not been offered? What is it? If is it chief minister? Does it, because definitely he can't be running mate at this point. Is there something he's looking for that any of these people will give him, that Azimio or Kenya Kwanza or Jimmy Wanjigi has not already offered him? So that is the strategic question that is on the table. And if I look at Kalonzo Musyoka and the question of, is it a miscalculation, or I look at him as a man who's just wasted an opportunity. Between the previous election and now, his voter base is very clear. We know the numbers. He should be, his eyes should be on those numbers. What has he done to mobilize or to use this voter base to negotiate for something even beforehand? Or how was he prepared for this election cycle, if you ask me? If I was a manager, someone, I keep going back to this, I would ask him, what exactly had you wanted? You had 5 years. Where were you going for those 5 years? And how did you prepare for it? How did you mobilize? How did you pitch it? And how are you negotiating for it? This far, it doesn't matter where you go. There's nothing new you're getting other than what has already been put on the table for you. So what is the point of wasting the whole country's time for 1 week?
Wow. Well, no sympathy for Kalonzo as well, because there are people who argue that he boxed himself. But is there a way he can get out of this? Walking back to Azimio, is that an option right now?
Well, I wouldn't say that Kalonzo is wasting his time or wasting Kenya's time. Kenyans are at liberty to take decisions oblivious of Kalonzo's time when he's reflecting. But the germane question is, what gives him the power? What gives him the alacrity? What gives him the energy and authority to go back and reflect, knowing that the entire nation is looking at him as he looks at his cows, as he looks at his chicken, and people are asking, what decision is he going to make? The reason why is a key success factor for any presidential candidate is if he decides you to support, your probability of winning is significantly high. It raises your probability of winning by a huge margin, and that's why he's sitting pretty. And then number two, he has to keep on playing these games so that his voters are glued to him. Because if he makes a miscalculation, it's going to be a chapter in history books. And also, one of the panelists has said that he's been given a position of a chief cabinet secretary, which is as good as a deputy president. Obviously, that cannot be the case because that will require maybe a Kenya Gazette notice. But the position of a DP is constitutional. Now, if the position of a chief cabinet secretary is as good as a DP, then how come Martha Karua was not given that position and then Kalonzo takes this? So in my view, we must look at this gentleman who has got a stellar career at a global level. The other day you saw him in Kampala, you saw him in Juba running around doing these international projects. So he's a man who feels mistreated. And ethnic nationalism in Kenya is alive and kicking. If you come across somebody who tells you that we don't have ethnic nationalism, then just go through the scoreboard and look at the basics. Out of 10 people from say, the Ukambani community, out of 10, probability that are 8 are in Wiper is almost 1. If you go to Bondo, you pick 10, probability that 8 are in ODM is almost 1. That is about ethnic nationalism. If you go to Eldoret right now, then you ask people, what do you make of the wheelbarrow? They'll say that is the best thing after sliced bread. That is about ethnic nationalism because Kenyans have been held hostage by tribal leaders. Their word is as good as law. Okay. That's what gives Kalonzo his asset value and very serious political capital. Okay,
Wakili Nyaribo, we now want to look at the options that Kalonzo has.
Yeah.
And we've discussed the fact that the position of running mate in all the coalitions or presidential tickets is already gone. The fact of the matter is there have been other arrangements in every coalition and distribution of including government positions already up to this point. Even if he waits to weigh in probably in the event of a runoff and he helps one or the other coalition, what will he gain from that? Because one, the position of deputy president is already gone.
It's gone. Yeah. I really have liked the analysis Dismas has brought out in terms of ethnic, card. These Kalonzo Musyoka and like William Ruto, Raila Odinga, they all have a strong, ethnic constituent, and they should utilize it correctly. That is the real issue. Kalonzo Musyoka, no one can dispute that he sits with close to 2 million votes. No one can dispute that. But can you take advantage of that at the expense of national interests? That's the issue. So I think that Kalonzo Musyoka finally, anyway, will come to Azimio la Umoja. He will negotiate for the best available position after deputy president. And I think Raila Odinga has already extended that olive branch. He has said be the chief minister for just because the constitution has not opened up, anybody to be appointed prime minister. Kalonzo Musyoka could easily be prime minister depending on the new arrangement that could allow for that. So I think the only option left, so my brother Willa, because he was also burning with a point to speak, let Kalonzo Musyoka be honest, friendly, and man enough, and go back to Azimio la Umoja so that they can work together as a country.
Okay, Hesbon, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just two things that I need to allay. Dismas has dismissed, the whole idea of ethnic nationalism and say that it's big in Kenya. I'm alive to that, and that's what I said. I just say that Kenyans are also rational. If you look at these elections right now, Dismas talks about ODM being popular in certain areas. Go to my native Migori County today. I mean, we are all in ODM. We support Raila Odinga. But at the gubernatorial level, the contest is very hot between an ODM candidate and a candidate who is in DAP. And that tells you that we are rational. And if you look at the tradition, I don't think at the constituency and the county level, people have voted consistently along ethnic nationalism, which tells you that there is change. People are beginning to be a lot more rational. And then number two, the constitution is very clear on the position of the deputy president. But the president also has a discretion to assign roles. And we've seen Raila has done that, the deputy president will have a docket, the Justice and Constitutional Affairs. What I say is not that the role of the deputy president were taken to a chief minister. I simply say that there are elements in the JD of the chief cabinet secretary that are almost the same to what is offered in other coalitions. And then on your last question, what are the options? I think the options are very clear, that there are formidable political formations that have offered Kalonzo probably different options. It is upon Kalonzo to sit down with the people whose interests he represents and genuinely look at all these options and pick what makes sense to the people that he represents, and that is the Kamba nation. I mean, there is no harm in joining a coalition after making a decision and give a rationale for switching from one decision, saying that you're going to contest as presidential candidate, and then come back and say, after looking at this offer that have been given by Azimio, looking at what other options are there in Kenya Kwanza and any other coalition, including Safina, I have settled on this, and explain to your people what Azimio has given Kalonzo is very simple to explain to the people of Kamba Nation. And then lastly, I think Rita also raised a very critical issue. If you've been offered almost the same thing in all the coalitions, I think as a candidate, it is upon you to decide where you go. You are likely to go to a coalition that is likely to win. It is not about what you've been offered. It is about winning. Mm-hmm. And I think with Azimio, the Kamba votes galvanized in Azimio, Kalonzo has a better chance of helping people in the entire Kambaland and Kamba in diaspora realize their aspirations.
Okay. And the one story that we're not telling in all this is the fate of the Wiper Party candidates and aspirants, especially in the Ukambani region. Most of them had already prepared campaign paraphernalia with the Azimio labeling, including some with Raila Odinga's face on it. If at all Kalonzo makes good his promise and actually runs for president, what happens to all these candidates who are now in limbo and waiting for Kalonzo Musyoka to make up his mind in the next 10 days or so? Meanwhile, Mike Sonko is not sure whether or not to use his campaign paraphernalia in Mombasa, because it still has the Azimio branding. Let's take a break. When we come back, we look at the independent wave. Over 5,000 aspirants have actually are waiting for clearance by the IEBC to run for various seats countrywide. Why so many? We'll be looking at that after the break.